When it comes to epic anime battles, few matchups are as intriguing as the boss Diavolo vs Dio Part 3. These two villains are among the most powerful and enigmatic characters in the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure franchise, and each possess a range of unique abilities that would make for a truly epic showdown. In this breakdown, we'll take a closer look at how a hypothetical fight between the boss and Dio might play out. We'll examine how the fight would start, how the battle would progress, and how it would ultimately come to an end. Along the way, we'll consider each character's strengths and weaknesses, as well as the strategies they might employ in order to emerge victorious. How the fight would start. In order to understand how the fight might begin, we need to first consider each character's abilities and strengths. The boss, Diavolo, is known for his ability to see into the future through the use of his stand, King Crimson. This allows him to anticipate his opponent's moves and react accordingly, giving him a significant advantage in battle. He's also a skilled fighter in his own right, with exceptional speed and agility that allow him to move quickly and evade attacks. Dio, Part 3, on the other hand, is a vampire with a range of powerful abilities that make him a formidable opponent. His stand, the world, allows him to stop time for up to 9 seconds, giving him a critical advantage in battle. He is also incredibly strong and durable, able to withstand even the most devastating attacks. Given these abilities, it's likely that the fight between the boss and Dio would begin with a very cautious stance, each character probing for weaknesses in the other. The boss would likely use his predictive abilities to anticipate Dio's movements, while Dio would rely on his speed and strength to launch quick, devastating attacks. Once the initial phase of the battle had ended, the fight would likely become much more intense. The boss would continue to rely on his predictive abilities to stay one step ahead of Dio, while Dio would try to use his superior strength and speed to overpower his opponent. One key factor in this battle would be the world's ability to stop time. If Dio was able to use this ability effectively, he could potentially gain a significant advantage over the boss. However, the boss's ability to see into the future might allow him to anticipate Dio's use of this ability, giving him a chance to prepare and counterattack. Another critical element of this battle would be the characters' respective stands. King Crimson's ability to erase time could be incredibly powerful if used effectively, but it requires precise timing and execution. The world, meanwhile, is a more straightforward offensive stand that can deal devastating damage if it connects with its target. Ultimately, the battle between the boss and Dio would likely be a test of endurance and strategy. Both characters possess incredible powers and abilities, and the fight could go on for a long time as they tested each other's limits and tried to find a weakness to exploit. How the battle would end. So, who would come out on top in a battle between the boss and Dio? It's impossible to say for sure, as the outcome of such a fight would depend on a variety of factors, including each character's strategy, execution, and luck. However, it's possible to speculate about how the battle might end. If Dio was able to effectively use the world's time stop ability to catch the boss off guard, as Dio unleashes a powerful flurry of punches and kicks, the boss stands his ground, dodging and countering with equal ferocity. Despite the immense strength of his opponent, the boss proves to be a formidable adversary, utilizing his stand's unique ability to predict and avoid Dio's attacks. However, as the battle rages on, Dio begins to demonstrate the full extent of his power. With his stand, the world, he is able to freeze time for up to 9 seconds, allowing him to land devastating blows on his opponents before they even realize what has happened. The boss is not one to be underestimated, however. With his own stand, King Crimson is able to erase time, allowing him to effectively predict and avoid any attacks that Dio might throw his way. The two stands clash, creating a veritable storm of destruction as the two powerful stand users battle for supremacy. Despite the boss's best efforts, however, Dio's time-stopping ability proves to be too much to handle. In a desperate bid to turn the tide of the battle, the boss activates his stand's ultimate ability, Epitaph, which allows him to see 10 seconds into the future. For a brief moment, it seems as though the boss has the upper hand, as he is able to predict and avoid Dio's attacks with ease. However, Dio quickly catches on to the boss's ability and utilizes his own time-stopping power to counter it. With the ability to freeze time and land devastating blows, Dio quickly gains the upper hand once again. In a final desperate move, the boss activates King Crimson's final ability, Fate, which erases his own actions and allows him to rewrite the outcome of events. In a blinding flash of light, the battle comes to an end. The boss stands victorious. Dio, defeated, fades into nothingness, leaving behind only a stand, the world. So there you have it. In a battle between the boss and Dio, it ultimately comes down to their respective stands and their unique abilities. While the boss's King Crimson allows him to predict and avoid attacks, Dio's time-stopping power ultimately proves to be too much to handle. In the end, it's the boss's ability to rewrite fate that ultimately allows him to emerge victorious. So that was interesting. I'm sure by now you might have figured out, or if I haven't spoiled it in the title already, that was all written by an AI. Now, I know AI is a bit of a hot topic recently, but after using it to assist with my homework, I was curious about what AI is capable of. Aside from the dialogue being a bit clunky and just the entire ending, in my opinion, it didn't seem too far off from a video you might find right here on YouTube. So how did I get to this point? Well, let me break down a couple of things I found interesting while playing around with it, and even some of the funny results that came from those interactions to see if we can learn anything. First, I started off just asking it trivia about various anime series to determine what kind of information it'll provide, and whether that information is just tip of the iceberg, surface level answers, or if it can provide some actual detailed explanations of topics and point out the nuances within them. So with that, I first started asking questions about the series Devilman Crybaby and its manga, Devilman. I asked, what are the differences between Devilman's manga and the anime adaptation Devilman Crybaby? To which it responded, there are several differences between the Devilman manga and the Devilman Crybaby anime adaptation, including art style. The most notable differences between the two is the art style. The manga features a more traditional anime manga art style, while the anime has a more modern and unique art style. Storyline. While the overall plot and characters remain the same in both versions, the anime adaptation takes some liberties with the story. It condenses some of the events and changes some of the characters' motivations and relationships. Gore and violence. The Devilman Crybaby anime adaptation is known for its extreme violence and gore, which is not as prevalent in the manga. Music. Devilman Crybaby features a unique and memorable soundtrack that differs from the manga. Tone. The anime adaptation has a darker and more somber tone compared to the manga, which is more action-oriented. Overall, while the core elements of the story remain the same, the Devilman Crybaby anime adaptation takes a more artistic and stylized approach to the source material, with changes in the story, visuals, and tone. Which, while technically correct, it's a very the door is red kind of response. Like, of course the music is going to be different between the manga and the anime, one of them's a fucking book. So when I asked it for some more specific examples of the differences, it actually gave me some pretty good answers. For example, it brings up Taro, Miki's brother, who is absent from the manga. Introduction of Miki's brother. In the anime adaptation, Miki has a younger brother named Taro, who is not present in the manga. Taro's character serves as a device to show the impact of the events on innocent bystanders and also plays a role in the climax of the series. But it didn't just stop at that. It went on to explain Taro's purpose in the anime. Granted, it's not the most in-depth analysis of the character, but it did have a level of depth I wasn't expecting at that moment. What really surprised me was when it discussed a certain character's goals and motivations in the series. So spoilers if you haven't seen the Devilman Crybaby anime or if you haven't read the Devilman manga. Changing of character motivations. Some of the characters' motivations are different in the anime's adaptation. For example, in the manga, Dio Asuka's goal is to destroy both humanity and demons, whereas in the anime, he is attempting to create a new world by combining humans and demons. Not only was this a good analysis of the different character motivations, but it's also something not many people bring up about the series. With this, I thought I should give it some harder questions and throw in some curveballs to really test its limits. So I asked it, who is Dio Brando? Which it responded, Dio Brando is a fictional character and one of the primary antagonists in the manga and anime series, Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. He is introduced as the adopted brother of the protagonist, Jonathan Joestar, but quickly reveals himself to be a cruel and sadistic person who seeks to dominate and control others. Dio is known for his signature catchphrase, which he says while pummeling his opponents with a barrage of punches. Dio possesses the power of a mysterious stone mask that grants him vampiric abilities, including superhuman strength, agility, and healing abilities. He uses these powers to terrorize and manipulate those around him, often using innocent people as pawns in his schemes. Throughout the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure series, Dio reappears in various forms and incarnations, with his presence being felt long after even his physical defeat. He is a popular and iconic character in the series and is often cited as one of the most memorable anime villains of all time. Now, you might be thinking, isn't that a pretty easy question? And I would say yes, but just wait till I hit him with old razzle-dazzle, because I then followed up with, who is Dio? You see what I did there? The response I got was, Dio is the primary antagonist of the third part of the manga and anime series JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, known as Stardust Crusaders. He is a vampire and the arch-enemy of the Joestar family. Having previously appeared as a villain in the first part of the series, Dio is a powerful and sadistic villain with a charismatic and manipulative personality. He is known for a signature pose in which he crosses his arms and says, while attacking his opponents with a barrage of punches. Dio possesses various supernatural powers, including superhuman strength, speed, and durability, as well as the ability to stop time for a short period. He uses these powers to control and manipulate those around him, often targeting the Joestar family members in particular. Dio is a popular and iconic character in the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure series, known for his over-the-top personality, powers, and iconic catchphrases. Now that I knew that it knew that there was a difference, I asked it to explain the differences between Dio Brando and Dio, but for the purpose of uploading it as a YouTube video, and it spat out this wall of text. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a complex and multi-layered anime series, and two of the most notorious villains are Dio Brando and Dio. While these characters may appear to be one and the same, there are in fact several key differences that set them apart. In this video, we'll delve deep into the nuances of Dio Brando and Dio, exploring the subtle distinctions between them. First, let's examine the character of Dio Brando. Dio Brando is introduced as a primary antagonist of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure's first part, Phantom Blood. He is depicted as an aggressive and abusive individual, utilizing his vampiric powers to subjugate others and ultimately usurp humanity. In contrast, Dio, the character that Dio Brando later transforms into, exhibits a more refined personality that is distinct from Dio Brando. One notable difference is their respective levels of cunning. While Dio Brando is a more impulsive and reckless figure, Dio exhibits a more methodical and calculated approach to his evil deeds. This is especially evident in Dio's treatment of the Joestar family, as he seeks to eradicate them for his own gain. Moreover, Dio's modus operandi is to achieve an ultimate form of power by utilizing his vampiric abilities to their fullest extent. This stands in stark contrast to Dio Brando's more general goals of conquest and domination. This distinction is most exemplified in Dio's famous The World power, which allows him to stop time and manipulate it at his will. In terms of personality, Dio Brando is characterized as a flamboyant, larger-than-life individual, while Dio exudes a more understated, almost reserved persona. This difference is also reflected in their physical appearance. Dio Brando is often depicted in more colorful, almost garnished clothing, while Dio dons a more subdued black and white ensemble. In summary, the differences between Dio Brando and Dio are many and varied, ranging from their goals to their motivations to their personalities and even their fashion sense. While it may be easy to overlook these distinctions at first glance, a closer inspection reveals a complex and intricate tapestry of character traits and motivations that make these two iconic villains stand out as unique individuals. So the next time you're watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, take a moment to appreciate the subtle nuances of Dio Brando and Dio. Honestly, not bad. It did stumble a bit when trying to differentiate between the powers of the Dios, but I wanted to go deeper and see if it could really become a JoJo tuber. So I said, write that same video, but this time overcomplicate the explanations to the point where it sounds new. While I'm not going to read the entire response, because it is pretty similar to the previous one, let me read the first couple sentences. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a complex and multi-layered anime series, and two of its most notorious villains are Dio Brando and Dio. While these characters may appear to be one and the same, there are in fact several key differences that set them apart. In this video, we'll delve deep into the nuances of Dio Brando and Dio, exploring the subtle distinctions between them. When I first read this, something it wrote scared me a bit, but it wasn't until I ran it through one more time by asking it to write the same video, but along with overcomplicating the explanations, explain those overcomplications with so much detail that it borders on there being too much detail, all the while in the format of a full feature-length documentary, where I fully realized why. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a beloved anime franchise that has been captivating audiences for over 30 years. At the heart of this franchise is the dynamic and complex villainous duo of Dio Brando and Dio. While many viewers may believe these two characters to be one and the same, there are in fact many subtle and nuanced differences that set them apart. In this feature-length documentary, we will explore these differences in great detail, from their respective origins to their unique personalities and motivations, and even their fashion choices. Origins. The story of Dio Brando and Dio begins with the introduction of Dio Brando in part 1 of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure manga and anime series, Phantom Blood. As a young boy, Dio was adopted into the wealthy Joestar family, and it soon becomes clear that he is a manipulative and abusive individual who seeks to overthrow the family and claim their fortune for himself. Over the course of the series, Dio is transformed into a powerful vampire, and he becomes a formidable adversary to the protagonist, Jonathan Joestar. Fast forward to part 3 of the series, Stardust Crusaders, and Dio is resurrected as Dio, a more refined and powerful version of his former self. In this form, Dio seeks to use his vampiric abilities to achieve ultimate power, and he becomes the primary antagonist of the series. Differences in personalities and motivations. One of the key differences between Dio Brando and Dio is their respective personalities and motivations. Dio Brando is characterized as a flamboyant and ostentatious figure who revels in his power and influence. In contrast, Dio is a more understated and calculating character who is focused solely on achieving his ultimate goal of attaining ultimate power. Another key difference between the two characters is their respective levels of cunning. Dio Brando is often more impulsive and reckless in his actions, while Dio exhibits a more methodical and strategic approach to his evil deeds. This is exemplified in Dio's treatment of the Joestar family as he seeks to eradicate them in order to achieve his goals. The power of the world. Perhaps the most famous difference between Dio Brando and Dio is the latter's possession of the world. world, a unique ability that allows him to manipulate time and space to his advantage. This power is in stark contrast to Dio Brando's more general vampiric abilities, and it demonstrates the level of power and control that Dio seeks to attain. Fashion choices. Even the fashion choices of Dio Brando and Dio differ greatly, providing further insight into their respective personalities and motivations. Dio Brando is often depicted in a flamboyant, colorful clothing that reflects his larger-than-life persona, while Dio dons a more subdued, black and white ensemble that reflects his understated and calculating nature. In conclusion, the differences between Dio Brando and Dio are many and varied, ranging from their respective origins to their personalities and motivations to even their fashion choices. While it may be easy to overlook these distinctions at first glance, a closer examination reveals a complex and multifaceted tapestry of character traits and motivations that make these two iconic villains stand out as unique individuals. So the next time you're watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, take a moment to appreciate the subtle nuances of Dio Brando and Dio and the intricate web of differences that set them apart. The legacy of Dio Brando and Dio. As JoJo's Bizarre Adventure continues to capture the hearts and minds of anime fans around the world, the legacy of Dio Brando and Dio has become even more pronounced. These two villains are not only remembered for their distinct personalities and abilities, but also for their impact on the broader anime genre. One of the many ways in which Dio Brando and Dio have left their mark on the anime world is through their influence on other villains. The idea of a charismatic and flamboyant antagonist who seeks to dominate the world and crush their enemies can be traced back to Dio Brando, and it has been emulated in many other anime series since then. In addition to inspiring other villains, Dio Brando and Dio have also been the subject of countless memes and cultural references, from the iconic meme to the many parodies and homage that has been made in their honor. These two villains have achieved a level of cultural significance that extends far beyond the anime community. Perhaps most importantly, however, Dio Brando and Dio have become emblematic of the overall spirit of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure itself. This is a franchise that celebrates the unconventional and the bizarre, and is characterized by a relentless sense of creativity and innovation. Dio Brando and Dio embody these qualities in many ways, from their outlandish abilities to their iconic fashion choices, and they serve as a testament to the power of imagination and originality in storytelling. In conclusion, Dio Brando and Dio are two of the most iconic and beloved villains in the anime world. Through their distinctive personalities, abilities, and fashion choices, they have left an indelible mark on the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure franchise, as well as on the broader anime genre. Whether you're a die-hard JoJo's fan or a casual anime viewer, there's no denying the impact that these two villains have had on the world of anime and beyond. That introduction freaked me out a bit because it is eerily similar to the intros of my JoJo videos.
When it comes to everything JoJo, a big reason why so many people are drawn into the series definitely falls.
Jokes aside, the level of depth gone into detailing the differences between the Dios is really impressive, especially in the Act 3 sections where the AI details that the level of power and control given to Dio through his stand is the same he desires to achieve is a really good point that I did not expect it to bring up. Hell, I didn't even expect it to bring up the differences between their fashion choices that got thrown in there. While of course it's not perfect, that doesn't make it any less impressive or cool that it could even replicate this much of what you'd see in a YouTube video analyzing characters. I'm sure that if I kept running it through and feeding it information and corrected some of the things it got wrong, it genuinely could have produced a quality script that would work as a video. But that was boring and I didn't feel like doing that, so I moved on to the main event and asked it who would win in a fight. Specifically, I said, who would win? The boss, Diavolo, or Dio Part 3 in a fight, and why? When explaining who would win, I want you to break down three things: how the fight would start, how exactly the battle would play out, and how it would end. The explanation/breakdown should be at least 2,000 words, but can be more, resulting in the script that I read at the beginning of the video, which it really had me thinking Dio was gonna win for a second, which would be more likely, but then out of nowhere, it pulls out the line, "In a blinding flash of light, the battle comes to an end. The boss stands victorious. Dio defeated fades away into nothingness, leaving behind only a stand, the world." There's just so many things weird about this line, all stemming from the fact that Diavolo now has some new ability called Fate, which he can whip out whenever he wants. I will say, the last line does go pretty hard, with only the world remaining, but I digress. The purpose of this video is a bit all over the place. I wanted to show off what AI is capable of, but at the same time, I wanted to show off some of the funny moments I had when interacting and messing around with it, though the technology does call into question the validity of people's work now. Are the videos you're watching written by a person or an AI meant to replicate that person's writing style? But also, does it matter? if an AI comes up with most of someone's script, but it still has their flair and style to it, does that now lower the authenticity of the video even if the quality remains the same? While some might say yes for more obvious reasons like you're not the one writing it anymore, others might say no because what's the difference if it sounds the same and the person is still engaging with the AI to cater it to their style? Both points are valid in their own way, and it's really up to the viewer to draw the line in the sand of what they deem acceptable. But switching back to Jojo real quick, I asked it one final question. The ultimate question: how does King Crimson work? It responded with, King Crimson is a stand of Diavolo, the main antagonist of Part 5 of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure manga series. King Crimson's ability is somewhat complicated and difficult to understand at first glance, but I'll do my best to explain it in a way that's easy to follow. At its core, King Crimson's ability is to manipulate and erase time. Specifically, it can erase up to 10 seconds of time, effectively skipping over events that occurred during that period. During this time, Diavolo himself is able to move freely and take any action he desires without anyone being able to perceive or react to his movement. To understand how King Crimson's ability works, it's important to understand the concept of cause and effect. When something happens, it creates a cause, which in turn leads to an effect. For example, if someone throws a punch, the cause is their arm moving forward, and the effect is the punch connecting with its target. What King Crimson does is erase the cause of an event while allowing the effect to still occur. So if someone were to throw a punch at Diavolo, he could activate King Crimson's ability, erase the moment where the punch is thrown, and allow the effect of the punch connecting with him to still occur. This means that, to anyone else watching, it would seem as though Diavolo was suddenly hit with no apparent cause. It's important to note that while time is being erased, Diavolo himself is still able to move and take actions freely. This means that he can take advantage of the confusion caused by his ability to launch surprise attacks on his opponents as they are unable to perceive or react to his movements. However, I want to mainly focus on this one part where it explains one of the most unique aspects of King Crimson's ability is its final ability, Fate. With this ability, Diavolo is able to erase his own actions from the timeline, effectively rewinding time by a few seconds and allowing him to take a different action. This can be used to avoid attacks, redirect them, or even turn the tables on an opponent in the midst of battle. This is an ability that was mentioned during the fight with Dio, and I could just not think of what it was talking about. The explanation itself doesn't not make sense. I was thinking maybe it just gave the name Fate to King Crimson's time skip ability, but then it mentioned rewinding time, and then I was just completely confused. Like, I thought maybe it had something to do with Killer Queen and the fact that Bites the Dust is a Requiem ability, and that's what Diavolo was trying to achieve, so it just crossed wires there. Then I thought maybe it confused Giorno and Diavolo, and it was Diavolo who unlocked GER, but then I remembered the scene where Diavolo used King Crimson, but GER reversed everything he did, making the blood go back into his hand and put him back where he was standing before he used his stand. And then I realized, oh shit, it's talking about the fact that when Diavolo dies in the death loop, he gets sent back a couple seconds prior. So the AI straight up said, that's not a bug, it's a feature, and added it to his stand's ability. So regardless of what happens with what I mentioned earlier, I think at least JoJo fans can take solace in the fact that not even artificial intelligence knows how King Crimson works.
Alright, you wanna know? Fine, I admit it! I don't know how King Crimson works!
Thank you so much for watching, I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, then please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. If you want to help support me and my videos, check out my Patreon. I got cool stuff over there and it would really mean a lot, but I appreciate you being here watching this right now. Also, check out my Twitter to keep up with whatever I got going on. Also, I live stream both on this channel and my Twitch channel pretty frequently, so if you see me live, hop in chat, say hi, I would love to have you. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. If you haven't already, watch the anime, read the manga. I'll see you in the next one.